Welcome back to Master 79. In this lesson we take on ielts speaking cue card number 44. Describe a new development in the area where you live. We will plan it, answer it, and then work through all 5 part 3 questions. 2 things before we start. Our candidate, Trang, is an invented persona, so copy her technique, not her content. And where we say band 9, we mean our own assessment against the public ielts descriptors, not a certified examiner score. First, the shape of part 2. The examiner hands you a card and a pencil. You get 1 minute to prepare, then you speak for between 1 and 2 minutes. The examiner will stop you at 2 minutes, and stopping short of 1 minute costs you marks. So your target is a long turn of roughly 1 minute 40 to 1 minute 50 seconds. Here is card 44 exactly as it is printed. 3 bullets, then a closing instruction, and explain how you feel about it. That last line is not decoration. It usually carries the most marks because it is the part that cannot be memorized from a model answer. 2 honest notes about this particular card. The part 3 questions drift away from the topic of a new development into transport, leisure and cinema. That is how the card is printed, and we have reproduced it and changed rather than tidying it up. Also, the 3rd bullet assumes the development is finished. If yours is still under construction, say so and estimate. That is a legitimate answer, not a dodge. Now the 1 minute of planning. 4 rules. Write keywords, never sentences, because sentences eat the whole minute. Spend most of that minute on the last bullet, feelings, because that is where band 9 lives. Plant 1 vivid image you can stretch if you finish early, and leave yourself 1 small criticism, because a perfect story always sounds rehearsed. Here are the actual notes Trang made in her minute. Count them, about 12 fragments across 4 headings. Notice there is not 1 complete sentence on that page, and notice that the feelings column is the fullest one. Now the long turn itself. We will take it in 4 pieces, 1 per bullet, and look at what each piece is doing. Listen first, then read the notes on the right.
I'd like to talk about a park that opened near my flat in Hanoi about 18 months ago. It was built on the site of an old textile factory that had been standing empty for years, so it was quite a dramatic transformation. It isn't huge, maybe the size of a couple of football pitches, but they've packed a lot into it: a looping walking track and outdoor gyms, a small skate area for teenagers, and a shaded playground with proper rubber matting rather than concrete. I first noticed something was happening in the spring of 2023 when the hoardings went up and the old factory chimney came down. I passed that corner every morning on my way to work, so I had a front row seat. For months it was just churned up there and cranes, and I assumed another apartment block was going up. That's usually what happens to land like that. It was only when I saw them laying turf that I realized it would be green space. All in, I'd say it took the best part of 2 years from demolition to the opening ceremony. There was a long stretch in the middle where nothing seemed to move at all. I gather the funding was held up, and then it suddenly accelerated in the final 6 months. The landscaping went in almost overnight, which I found quite funny after all that waiting. As for how I feel, I'm genuinely delighted and slightly surprised by how much I use it. Before, if I wanted to run, I had to cycle right across town to the lake. Now I just go downstairs. But what strikes me most isn't the exercise, it's the social side. In the early evening, the place is absolutely heaving. Grandparents doing tai chi, children on scooters, students sprawled on the grass. It's given the neighborhood a sort of living room, which is something fast-growing districts in Hanoi are crying out for. If anything, my only reservation is the shade. The trees are still saplings, so in June it's brutal until the sun goes down.
That is the whole long turn. Here it is as 1 block so you can see the shape. 4 movements, each roughly matching a bullet, with the feelings section deliberately the longest. Notice she never says the words first, second, or finally. The structure is carried by the content, not by a list of signposts. Part 3 is different in kind, not just in difficulty. The examiner drops the card and asks broader questions about your society. Answers should run about 4 to 6 sentences. Too short and you sound unwilling, too long and you sound like you are avoiding the follow-up. The examiner is listening for opinions with reasons, not facts. And here are the 5 Part 3 questions, again exactly as printed. Read them now because in the real test you will not see them at all. The examiner simply asks. Notice how much wider they are than the cue card topic. Question 1. What transportation do you use the most? Before she answers, here is the thinking behind it. Motorbike equals default, not a choice. Door-to-door, cheap, beats jams, but metro on center days, shift over 5 years.
Honestly, like most people in Hanoi, it's my motorbike and it's a default here rather than a conscious choice. It's door to door, it costs almost nothing to run, and you can thread through traffic that would leave a car stationary. Having said that, I started taking the metro on the days I go into the centre, partly because parking has become a nightmare, and partly because I can actually read on the train. So I am slowly becoming a two-mode commuter, which I don't think would have been possible 5 years ago.
Answers in one clause, then complicates it. The having said that turn is what lifts this out of band 7. Question 2. Is public transportation popular in Vietnam? Before she answers, here is the thinking behind it. Growing, but not popular. Buses cheap, indirect, last resort. Metro genuinely used, few corridors. Rural, barely exists.
It's growing, but I'd stop short of calling it popular. Buses have been around for decades and they're extremely cheap, so students and older people rely on them heavily. But for everyone else, the routes are indirect and the journey times are unpredictable, so they are seen as a last resort. The metro lines in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City have changed the picture a little because they are genuinely well used, but they only cover a handful of corridors so far. And outside the big cities, public transport barely exists as a daily option.
Refuses the premise politely, then splits the answer 3 ways. Buses, metro, rural. Structure is doing the work here. Question 3. What can be improved in public transport services? Before she answers, here is the thinking behind it. Reliability, reach, enforced bus lanes equals cheapest fix, one ticket across modes, real-time info, accessibility.
The obvious answer is to build more lines, but I'd argue reliability matters more than reach. If a bus is supposed to come every 10 minutes and it actually does, people will plan their lives around it. At the moment, they can't. The single cheapest fix would be dedicated bus lanes that are properly enforced, because a bus stuck in the same jam as a motorbike has no advantage at all. Beyond that, I'd like to see one ticket that works across buses and the metro and decent real-time information at stops. And I'd add accessibility, high steps, and no ramps quietly exclude a lot of elderly passengers.
Rejects the obvious answer in the first sentence, which instantly signals independent thinking, then ranks the fixes by cost. Question 4. What leisure facilities can be used by people of all ages? Before she answers, here is the thinking behind it. Parks ask nothing of you. Libraries that stopped being silent. Pools, up to a point. Common thread. Free plus passive vs single activity equals age segregated.
Parks are the classic example, and I think they're still the best one because they don't ask anything of you. No fee, no booking, no skill. A well-designed park works for a toddler and an 80-year-old on the same afternoon. Libraries are another, particularly the modern ones that have stopped being silent and started running story sessions and computer classes. Swimming pools too, up to a point. What these have in common is that they're free or nearly free and no passive. You can simply sit there. The places that end up age segregated, like gyms or skate parks, are usually the ones built around a single activity.
Gives examples, then abstracts a principle from them. Extracting a rule is the clearest signal of a band 9 Part 3 answer. Question 5. Do you think young people in your country like to go to the cinema? Before she answers, here is the thinking behind it. Yes, but film is secondary. Social package, food, photos survive streaming for that reason. Aircon, affordable, prediction, spectacle, titles.
They do, though I suspect the film itself has become almost secondary. Going to the cinema in Vietnam is a social package. You meet at the mall, you eat, you watch something, you take photographs. So it survives the competition from streaming in a way it might not if it were purely about the screen. It also helps that tickets are relatively affordable and the cinemas are air-conditioned, which in a Hanoi summer is not a small consideration. If I had to predict, I'd say attendance will hold up, but the choice of film will drift further towards big spectacle titles because that's the part streaming genuinely can't replicate at home.
Answers yes, then reframes why. Ends on a hedged prediction, which shows the future forms examiners are listening for. Here is the language bank from everything you have just heard, sorted by function rather than by topic. Learn these as slots you can drop your own content into. That is the difference between a phrase you own and a phrase you are reciting. And the second half. The grammar column is the one to work on if you are stuck around band 7. Every item there appeared naturally in an answer you have just heard, which is the only reason to learn it. Finally, the 4 criteria and 1 honest admission: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy are all demonstrated in the answers you just heard. Pronunciation is not. The model answer in this video is a synthetic voice, so treat its stress and intonation as neutral rather than as a target. For pronunciation, record yourself and compare against a human speaker. Your challenge: set a timer for 1 minute, plan card 4 to 4 with your own development, then speak for 2 minutes without stopping. Record it, then play it back with one question in mind. Did you spend most of your time on how you feel about it? If you did not, that is your next rehearsal. Subscribe to Master 79 for the rest of the cue card library, and I will see you in the next lesson.